What's going on, everybody? Jesse here, and welcome back to another episode in my survival series. And in today's episode, we're going to work on some grabbing functionality. We're going to be able to grab an item, rotate it around, and set it down in different parts of the world. And while grabbing an item is actually relatively easy, especially when using the physics handle like we are here, there's a lot of pitfalls and bugs that come along with it. So I walk you through step by step, showing you what the bugs are and giving you different ideas on how I solved those issues. So I hope you guys enjoy this video. Sit back, relax, and enjoy. Today's episode and others just like it are brought to you by the patrons listed on the screen. If you'd like to support the channel and future development, then consider visiting my Patreon or Buy Me a Coffee page, where you can receive various benefits such as early access to my videos, project downloads, as well as personalized support. You may also want to consider joining the community by joining my Discord server, where you can receive help from me as well as the community. So come on over and be a part of the conversation. All right, so we're here in the player character blueprint. For me, it's the BP True First Person blueprint. And first thing we need to do, let's go ahead and add an input action. So I'm going to go ahead and open up my content drawer. And here I'm already in the actions folder where I keep all my input actions. So I'm just going to right click and find input, and I'm going to select input action. I'm going to call this one IA_player just to keep with convention. Grab item. All right, so let's go ahead and open this up. So we're going to keep it a digital bool, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here to a trigger, open that up, and I'm going to make the trigger the down. I'll explain that in just a minute, but I'm going to choose down. I did a little bit testing. Down seems to be what I need for this particular input. So with that, I'm going to open up the content drawer again, and I'm coming back up here, and I'm going to open up my input mapping context, and I'm going to add a new mapping, and this new mapping will be bound to the IA player grab item that we just created. And for me, I'm going to click the keyboard here. I'm going to press the F key. I'm going to use F to grab. You can use whatever key you want, but I did this because when we do some rotation functionality, holding F while doing the rotation keys that I selected was a little bit easier than G or something like that, but you do it however you want, and we don't need to make any changes here. So let's go ahead and head back into the player character blueprint. So while I have all this functionality already laid out to what you saw at the beginning of this video, I'm going to do it a little bit different. I'm going to walk you through step by step so you can kind of see why we're doing some of the things that we're doing with this particular grab functionality, because as you'll see, where most videos and tutorials leave you that you find on YouTube, there's still a lot of bugs that go along with this. So I want to get around those bugs and just kind of show you why we're doing what we're doing. So I'll explain this as we go through, and we'll just jump back and forth, and we'll add the functionality as we see that we need it. All right, so let's go ahead and zoom in here, and let's drop in the new input action that we just created. Input action grab item, make sure it's the action event, and there we go. We should be familiar with this. So now the reason why we chose to do the down trigger here for this particular input is a couple reasons. One, as soon as we push the button down and hold it, the start is fired. Only when we release it does it complete. And then as well as while it is being started, so while the button is being held down, we also get triggered here. Now triggered fires just like tick. So we're going to be able to do some functionality in here. Instead of using tick, we're just going to use the triggered state here. So we're going to be able to use majority of these as we go through. So with this, first thing we need to do is we need to grab the vision, not the function. We need to grab the vision actor, get it out here, and let's make sure, is it valid? We don't want to do this if we don't have a valid vision actor. Plug this into the start. And then if we do have a valid actor, drag off the vision actor, get class. It's going to be all the way down here at the very bottom. Get class. And then with this, we want to make sure that the vision actor is of a certain type, which is in this case, the world item, BP world item right there. And now you may want to do a check for other types of items, but for now, we're just going to check on the BP world item because that's the only thing we have that we care about picking up at this point, and then drop in a branch. So if these conditions are all true, do we want to continue with what we're doing? So in the true, I'm going to create a new variable here, and I'm going to call this grab actor. So what I want to do now is I'm going to drag off of the vision actor, and I'm going to promote this to a variable. I'm going to call this grab actor, drag it in here into the true branch. And then with this grab actor, now we need a way to constrain the object to the character. All right. So what we need to do now, go up here and hit the plus add for the components. And we're going to add a physics handle, select that. And I'm going to call mine grab handle. Okay, and now that we have access to that grab handle, I'm going to pull out the component right here and let's get it. And I'm going to go grab component at location with rotation. Go ahead and plug that in there. So now where do we want to set its location at? Where do we want to grab it at? I'm going to take this new grab actor that we have and I'm going to type get component by class, and the component we want to grab off the grab actor. Now remember, this is just an actor right here, so we don't know it's a world item, right? So this is why we're going around it this way, is because now we can just grab the static mesh component, because we know that the world item that we want to pick up will have a static mesh component. So that's why we're going here. We don't need any fail safes with this. You can double check to make sure this doesn't return null, but if this is returning null, then your failure is further down the line. All right, so with this, let's just go get location, and we want the get world location. Now this can get plugged right straight into the location there, and drag off again, and let's go get world rotation, and we'll use this and plug this into the rotation right here. Lastly, let's go ahead and create another variable. I'm going to call this one B is grabbing. We need to track when we're actually grabbing an item here, so I'm going to change this to a boolean. Now I'm going to drag this out here, and we're going to set it. So now that we have this, I'm going to mark this as true. So now we are grabbing the object. So now we need to set this object's location. Right now we can grab it, and we're constraining it to our physics handle here, the grab handle, but we're not actually going to be able to move it around and hold it out in front of us. It's just going to be bound to this physics handle right here. So now we need to be able to set its location. So I'm going to scroll back here, and I'm just going to take all this, and I'm just going to kind of move it out of the way a little bit, because we're going to come up here off of the triggered. Now you can do this in tick if you want to, and actually originally I did do it in tick, but there's no reason, because this trigger acts like tick, and we only want to set the location of this physics handle when this button is being pressed down. So we'll just put it in here in triggered. So I'm going to drop in a branch, and we need to make sure, are we grabbing an item? Plug that in there. Now obviously we are grabbing an item if this is being triggered, but you're going to see in a little bit that there's going to be a condition we're going to set to where even when the button's being held down, that we may not be actually grabbing the item. Okay, so that's why we're checking this right here. And then from that, now we need to set the item's location. I'm going to go ahead and create a separate function, and I'm going to call this set grab actor location. We don't need any inputs or outputs on this. So in here, I'm going to grab the physics handle, which is grab handle, and I'm going to go set target location. We're not going to set rotation, just set target location. Now the location we need to set it is, this is going to be similar to a line trace. All right, so we're going to come up here now, and I'm going to grab the follow camera, drop it in here like so, and then from here, let's get world location. Okay, and then we're going to add to this world location, drag off the follow camera. Let's get world rotation, and from that world rotation, get forward vector. Now take this forward vector, and we're going to multiply this forward vector by a specific number to show about how far we want it to trace out in front of us, or the location, right? So this is why we're doing it similar to like we do with the line trace, because this will now dictate how far in front of us we want to have the object that we're grabbing. So I'm going to create another variable here. I'm going to call this grab distance. I'm going to make it of type float. I'm going to compile it now so I can set its default value. I'm going to set mine right now to a default value of, let's say, 150. Okay, and we're going to do a little bit more work in here, but for now, I'm just going to take this grab distance, and I'm going to plug it right into the multiplier right there. We'll come back and do a little bit more work on here for that. Then I'm going to take this, and I'm going to plug this into the new location. Next, go ahead and grab the grab actor that we have right here. Let's select it and get component by class. And again, the class we want is static mesh component. Get location, or get world location, and then grab the grab actor and type set actor location, plug that in, and then plug in our get world location there from the component, and now we're setting the actor location there. Now the reason why we're doing this is we want to set the actor when we're moving a component, which is what we're doing right here. When we move the component, which is just the static mesh, the actor stays back in its original location. So by doing this right here, we're ensuring the actual actor is following the mesh around the world. Without this, if you do any query, if you take an item and you move it across the world and then drop it, and then you want to run a program on it that says, where's the location of this actor? The actor is going to be back in its original location. It's not going to be where the mesh is. So we want to make sure that the actor is actually following the mesh as it moves around. Okay, so let's go ahead and add in a return node and then head back out to the event graph. All right, so let's go ahead and grab that function we just created, set grab actor location, plug it into the true branch right there. And that should be all we need right at this point in order to grab and move our item. But one thing I did forget is if we come back down here into the started section of this where we have the grab component location with rotation, I didn't actually feed the component in here that we want to move. So I'm going to drag off of the get component by class that we have right there. And that's the component we want to move. So now while this will work and we can carry the actor and move it around the world, it will still be, even when we don't hold the button any longer, it's still going to be bound to that physics handle, to the grab handle that we created. So what we want to do now is when we're done releasing the button, we want to release the object from the grab handle. So first, let's come down here now in the completed branch, and we need to get the grab actor. We need to make sure that the grab actor is valid. Plug that into the completed. Now, if it is valid, then let's just go ahead and we're going to take the is grabbing and we're going to set it out here and we're going to set it to false. We're no longer grabbing at this point, and then get our grab handle and release component. So there we go. So now this should be the basics that we need to move the item around. There's going to be some issues with this. This is essentially where most of the tutorials leave you with the grab handle, is right here. They'll actually put a lot of this into the tick right here, but we can do it in the triggered. We want to go a step beyond, and I'm going to show you some of that now. So make sure you compile it and save it, and let's head out into the world and see how this works. So for the purpose of testing, I added another item out here into the world just to kind of show you what is going on and some of the issues that we have with the way it's set here. But we've got this set up, so if we walk up here and press and hold the F key, you can see there it is now bound, and we're grabbing it. We're moving it around the world, so that's fantastic. 150, it's a little bit close, but we can adjust that, and we will adjust that. You'll see here in just a little bit. And if I let go of it, there we go. It drops into the world. Come up here, we can drop it on top of this, and it moves around, simulates physics, does what we need it to do. So now, what are the issues with this? You might ask, why is this video so long if this is already done and we're able to grab the object? So first, if we have this object and we're held onto it, I'm holding the F key. If I move around like this and then let go of the F key while moving, it's going to toss it, which might be like a desirable feature, and I haven't found a way to work around this yet, but watch this. There we go. So yeah, that's not something you really want to be able to do with your object, or maybe it is. If it is, then you can go ahead and leave it like that, but that's not something I want. I don't want to be able to throw my items clear across the world, because that didn't take much effort to do that. Now, the other issue here is we have this item, we're holding it. Essentially the same thing. We can smack it into these objects and really just kind of shoot them around the world just like that. And then there's some other issues. If I'm not going to be able to do it here with this, maybe I'll show you that when we go up. But there's several issues here when it comes to the physics of these, and physics is a pretty difficult thing in Unreal. You're either all in or all out, and even if you're all in, you're still probably going to have a lot of bugs and issues with the physics engine, but we do what we can to work with it. So let's go ahead and exit out of here, and let's go add some of the features to try to get rid of some of these bugs that we have. So let's go ahead and start working on the grab distance. This is important. One, we're going to be able to move an item in and out from where we're holding it, which will become handy when we're moving objects around the world. But if you notice, when we grab an item, it automatically snaps it into what we have set as the grab distance. That doesn't look good. Where we pick it up is where we want to have it. So let's just go ahead and do some functionality on that. So if we come up here to the started branch, after the grab actor, let's go ahead and create some space here. I'm going to take the grab distance. I'm just going to drop it in right there, and I'm going to set this in here like so. So now we need to set this. So what are we going to set it to? So we need to come down here. I'm going to just take a copy of this, and I'm going to drop it up here. I'm going to duplicate it and set it up here for now. And I'm going to create a new function. I'm going to call this function calculate min grab distance. So this is the minimum distance that we are allowed to grab an object. So with this, we need an input of static mesh component. So I'm just going to call this static mesh component, and it needs to be of type static mesh component. And then on the return, we're going to need a float out here. I'm going to call this one min distance and I'm going to make it of type float, and I'm going to disconnect this and just kind of slide it off to the edge a little bit. So what I'm going to do with this, I'm going to drag this out, add a reroute node, because we're going to have to pull off this a couple times, and I'm going to get the local bounds of this object. So we want to take the size of our object into account when we're moving it in and out, because let's say we're moving an except like a desk, we're moving that in and out, and you have it rotated in such a way to where the width of the desk, the biggest part of the direction of the desk, is facing you, and you want to get a closer look at it, and you bring the distance into you. You don't want that either clipping through you or pushing you around or anything like that. So we need to take the bounds of our mesh into account when we're doing this. So I'm going to take off the max. I'm going to add in a multiply node here. And we're going to multiply this. We're just going to get world scale. And we're doing this because if you've got items in the world and you have it scaled at different sizes, say you're moving a rock around, but you only have one rock mesh or something, and you just scale it to different sizes as you put it around the world, but you want to be able to move them, you need to take that scale into account. So we're going to take that, we're going to multiply it together, so that way we just take the size of the mesh into account on the scale level. All right, and if it's just scaled to a level of 1, then it's just going to take its normal size in there. So from this though, now this is a vector, right? So if we, well, here, let me just right click on this and we split this. It's a vector, so we get the X, Y, and Z of it. So how do we know what to grab from here? Generally speaking, all I want to do is I want to get the largest value out of here. That's going to tell me how big the mesh is. So the largest value in here is what we're going to take into account. So anything smaller than that, it's not that big of a deal. It's not going to clip through you as long as we account for the big one. So I'm going to drag out of here. I'm going to go get max element, and this is going to get the largest value out of this vector. All right, so if your desk is 200 centimeters wide, 100 centimeters tall, 100 centimeters deep, it's going to return 200. So with that, now I want to grab or create a new variable. I'm going to call this one min grab distance. Now this is the minimum amount period that I want to have an object to the body. So for that, I'm actually going to compile it here, and I'm going to come over here and I'm going to set its minimum distance to 150, I believe, which we set our grab distance to that. I actually want that to be a minimum distance of, or a default distance of 350. This doesn't really matter too much, but it's a default value after we move on from here. But I'm going to grab this minimum distance now, and with that, I am going to add it to this value right here. So if I have a minimum distance of 150, and this is say 200, then now the new value that we can bring in is going to be a minimum of 350 units from the player. So that's where we're going to be, which means if at its longest point we draw it in to look closer, or to be closer to the player, it's still going to be 150 units apart. So that's what's going to end up being here. So that's what this minimum distance is. So with that though, I want to go ahead and clamp this now. And what I want to clamp it to is the minimum, which is the minimum grab distance right here. And its maximum value should not exceed a desired amount. So I'm going to create another one here, another variable. I'm going to call this max grab distance, float as well. I'm going to drag it out here and plug it into the max. So I'm going to compile it and set a default on here before I forget. And for now, for me, the furthest I want to send a mesh out is 500. So I set its default value there. And now with that, we could take this return value from that clamp, and that's what we push out at the end of the return node. So go ahead and make sure you have the execution pin hooked up here, and let's head back to the event graph. So with that now, go ahead and grab your calculate minimum grab distance and drag it into the graph. One last thing we need to do is we do actually need to make this appear. So I'm going to select pure right there. There we go. We don't need to, we're not changing any values in there, so no need to have it as an executable. So now we need to get the grab actor, and from the grab actor, let's get actor location. Now again, that's why it's important here that we were moving the actor along with the mesh itself. So now we have an accurate location of where the actor is. And from this, I'm going to go distance, and I want distance vector. So now I need to know the distance between two vectors here. I'm going to get the distance of the follow camera, get world location from the follow camera. I'm going to plug that here into the V2 of the distance vector. Then I'm going to take this value and I'm going to clamp it, and now its minimum clamp value will be that of this calculation here from calculate minimum grab, and the maximum will be the max grab distance that we set here. So now the reason why we're getting the distance off of here is if we run the mesh into a wall, it's going to calculate the difference, or we're going to do a trace on all this to check that, to be able to set the mesh's location so it doesn't clip through walls and things of that nature. We'll show that out in just a little bit here. So now if we take this clamp value, all right, so let's head on over to the set grab actor location. Now in here, where we have the multiply here for our target location here, we got the grab distance coming in here. So we want to go ahead and change this. We actually want to clamp this here. So I'm going to drag off here and go clamp float. All right. So now the minimum and the maximum. First, the minimum, we're just going to set the minimum here to be 20. It's just kind of an arbitrary number for me. And then the maximum, what we need to do is we need to decide what we want to do if we are carrying an actor around or carrying an item around and you come up to a wall or some other object. How do we handle the distance of that object? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new function, and I'm going to call this, actually I'm not going to create a new function. Let me delete this. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to copy vision trace. I'm just going to duplicate it here, and I'm going to call this grab trace. All right, so now it's got pretty much all the functionality in here that we need. All we need to do here is we need to take the vision distance. We actually need to replace it with grab distance. So I'm just going to drag it out here, and on the left hand side, drop it in. There we go. We got grab distance. All right. So with the trace channel, I'm going to change this one to be visibility, and then come back on over here. And now we can pretty much delete everything in here. I'm going to leave one return node. So go ahead and grab it all, delete it, drag over the return node. And then what we're going to pull out of here is we need to first, I'm going to grab a select off the return value of the line trace. In other words, did we actually hit something? I'm going to put it in here into the index. Did we hit something in this line trace? Now this is just like the vision trace. It's just coming from the camera. We're only checking the distance of the grab distance though. This is as far out as we're checking. So no matter how far out we have the object in front of us, we're doing this. Make sure ignore self is on just like it was before. So now if we actually hit something with our line trace on the visibility channel, so I'll show you this. We'll set up a little fake temporary wall. What we want is the distance. So take the distance and subtract, and I threw in 20. What this means is we're going to subtract 20 from the distance between where the character is at and the line trace hit. Subtract 20 so the object isn't right up against the wall, or the object that it's line tracing against, it's going to be about 20 units off of it. All right. So now with that, I'm going to take that. So if we are hitting an object in the line trace, we're going to plug that into the true, into the false. So we're going to take this now, and we're just going to take the return value, plug it into the return node, and I'm going to call this return node distance. Just like that, plug in the execution pin, and that's all we have to do for this grab trace. So go ahead and compile it, head back out into grab actor location. So now I'm going to grab this grab trace function. I'm going to set it as a pure function. Then I'm going to take it and I'm going to plug that into the max. So now this is our max distance that we're going to be able to set the actor when we see it. Go ahead and compile and save that. So let's go ahead and head on out and let's test this and see what this looks like. I'm going to head back out here to the map real quick. And in the map, I'm just going to open up the content drawer. I'm going to go down to the starting content, find a shape. I'm just going to take this shape cube. I'm going to put it out here, and then I'm just going to stretch this out and just make kind of a generic little wall with it, just like so. That should be good enough for our needs. So let's go ahead and run it and see what happens. All right, so let's go ahead and come over here and grab an item. And all of a sudden you're going to see it's acting pretty weird. So it looks like we're probably having some collision issues. So with that, go ahead and drop the item there. Let's back out of there. Let's head over to the BP world item. Open that up, and in here, select the display mesh, find collisions. And if we come over here in the collision preset, you can see we have all this. We still have it set as custom. I'm going to come down here to visibility. It's currently set to block. Let's go ahead and ignore visibility because that's the trace channel that we have going on. So that was the issue, is the mesh was triggering the trace. So it was bouncing back and forth because every time it hit it, it came closer and further. And yeah, so it's kind of weird. So now if we press play again, now if we come over here and we pick up a mesh, there we go. It should be just fine. So come up here to the wall, and it's going to hit and push the wall out. It's going to maintain the distance. Same thing with the ground. You can see here, we're going to fix this too. I'm going to limit the angle here that we have for the where we can view, so that we don't get so close with the mesh. And there's some other issues that we have. One, if we walk behind an object here and we walk, see how it just kind of zips through the wall? That's one bug that we still have to take care of while we're holding it here. We don't want that to happen. Okay. And now another issue that we have, I'm going to show this to you, see if I can't duplicate it. It's not as easy to duplicate it as you might think here, but if the mesh comes behind us and then we look, what happens is actually pretty unique and kind of hilarious. See if I can't duplicate this here. There you go. You can see it kind of zips you around when you get hit with the mesh as it comes around. It's hard to duplicate right now. If I had a bigger mesh, it would be a little bit easier. Let's go like this. Let's go ahead and back out, come into the map, and I'm going to take, let's take this one. I'm going to take the scale, and I'm going to jump it up by, say in the Y, let's jump it up by about 6. Press play. There we go. So now we got this in here. So now if I grab this, there you go. You can see how it flings me across the map. Yeah, so that's not really a desired function that we want in the game. So we're going to end up dealing with that as well. You can see, oh, there it goes. Look at that. See, that's something else we're going to take care of. See that bounce of that mesh? Yeah, that's not something we're going to want either. So let's go ahead and back out of here and jump back into the player character. All right, so before we fix any of these other issues, let's go ahead and add the ability to move the item in and out while we're holding it. All right, so let's go ahead and open up the content drawer. I'm going to head up here to my input actions. I'm going to add a new action, and I'm going to call this IA_player_grab distance. Go ahead and open this up, and I'm going to change the variable type from digital to an axis 1D float. Go ahead and save that. Jump back into your input mapping context. Add a new mapping context up here. Make sure you hit the plus. I hit the delete before. Try not to do that. You don't want to do that. Hit the plus button. Come down here and find what we just created, the IA player grab distance. And for the key, I'm actually going to select this, and I'm going to just move the middle mouse wheel up or down. It doesn't matter. It's going to show you the mouse wheel axis. That's what we want. We don't need any other triggers or modifiers for this. So make sure you go ahead and save that. Head back over into the player character blueprint, and let's look for that input action. There it is, IA player grab distance. Let's grab that one. So now what this allows us to do is every time we select the mouse wheel, if we move the mouse wheel forward, it's going to give us a +1 value here, and if we move the mouse wheel backwards, it's going to give us a -1. So we'd only want this to trigger if we are actually grabbing something. So drop a branch in, grab B is grabbing, throw it in there. So if we are grabbing something, then go ahead and execute this. And the only thing we really need to do is we need to set our grab distance, plug that into the true. So for the grab distance, what we need is grab actor and the component class. I'm going to come up here. I'm going to cheat. I'm just going to take these, duplicate them, bring them down here. And for this, I'm going to grab the calculate minimum grab distance, plug in the mesh. Let's go ahead and create a little bit of room, move this down, grab the create a new variable. I'm going to call this one grab increment speed. Now, this is only something I've created. You don't have to create this if you don't want to. You can hard code it, but this is variable I see that can be used for like a setting. If you want to be able to move the item in and out faster as you're scrolling it in and out, you can do that and certainly link it up. Otherwise, you don't need to do it. You can hard program it in. I'm going to compile it and set its default value. I'm just going to say default value to 2. Really doesn't matter. You play with it and do what's best for you. So I'm going to pull this out now. So our increment speed, I'm going to multiply it. Now this value here, what we're going to multiply against, this is how many units you want to move every click. So if this was set to 1, this is the value that would go across. So I'm going to do a default of 5 here. So this means every time I move the mouse wheel, it's going to move 10 units at a time. So I'm going to right click, I'm going to add a pin right here, and I'm going to take the action value and I'm going to plug it in right there. So what this is going to do, this is going to allow us to only have one function to move it in or out. So because this is either going to be +1 or -1, we're going to take this, which is 2, multiply it by 5, that's going to be 10. And if we're wheeling it forward, it's going to move positive 10. But if we go backwards, it's going to multiply it by -1, so it's going to be -10. So we take this value, let's go ahead and clamp it. The minimum value will be this right there, and then the maximum will be our grab distance maximum. Then take this clamp value and plug it into the set right there, and that's all we need to do. So let's go ahead and check this out now. Go ahead and compile, save it, and hit play. And before we do that, that's actually not going to work as I sit here and look at the code. So let's go ahead and draw it here. We need to add it to the original grab distance. So let's take grab distance, drag it down here, plus add the value of this into there, and then this is the value that we wish to clamp. There we go. Looking at that, that looks a little bit more correct. So now let's go ahead and compile it. Now we can hit the play button. All right, so let's go ahead and give this a shot, pick this up. And if I move the mouse wheel, there we go. Move it back in, and that's as close as we can get it right there because it's calculating. Remember, this is a 100 meter or 100 unit mesh, and then it adds the 150 I wanted away, and there we go. But if I look down, you can see it gets really close to me. That's not something, I don't really want this right here, because think about it, if it's a big mesh, we'll deal with that. So, but we can move this out. Now with this out, I think the next thing I want to tackle is when we pull it away from the wall, I don't want it to come through. When we get a certain distance away, I actually just want to stop grabbing that item and just have it fall. All right, so let's go ahead and deal with that right now. All right, now this is a fairly easy calculation for us to run. I'm going to come up here and I'm going to grab these nodes right here. I'm going to duplicate them and just create myself a little bit of space. I may move this into a separate function, collapse this all into a function. It's not going to be really used again as far as I can tell, this whole thing, but it's kind of in the way. So if it was set up as a different as a separate function, it might be all right. But I'm going to take these. So with this, we're calculating the distance between the grab actor and the follow camera. So with this, I'm going to go ahead and drag off, and I'm going to do greater than or equal to. And what we need is we need to take the grab distance and add, I'm going to add an arbitrary value. So add, I'm going to go 100. This isn't totally arbitrary. When I was doing some testing, it seemed when it got around about 200 units away from the grab distance is when the mesh shot through the wall. So I figured 100 was a good value for me to use. Use what you want, do your own testing. But if we take the grab distance plus 100 units, plug it into the greater than or equal to. So if the distance between the grab actor and the follow camera is greater than or equal to the distance plus 100, drop a branch in here, then that's when we want to stop grabbing the item. So we plug it in there. So how do we stop grabbing the item? Well, I'm going to create a custom event. I'm going to call this one stop grabbing. I'm going to drag it up here, and I'm just going to take this and I'm going to plug it straight into the is valid. Now, one thing we should have did even without this current function we're doing, so even if you don't do this current function, one thing we should be doing here when we complete this grab action is we should be clearing out this variable. So let's put a set here, not plug anything into it, so that way it becomes null. There's nothing being pointed to anymore. And then come up here to the true. So if this condition is true, we want to call stop grabbing and then plug that into the true. So now let's go ahead and head back into the map and give that a shot. All right, here we are. Grab an item. I'm going to wheel this out so it's a little bit further away. It makes it a little bit easier to do this testing. I'm going to go up behind the wall. There we go. And I'm still holding the F key down, but I come up and it's fallen. So I'm no longer holding the item. I let go at F and no big deal. It doesn't do anything extra. I can come up and I can grab that item again. There we go. There's the item. Back up and it drops it. So there we go. That function's taken care of. So now the next thing I want to take care of is see how we can move and smack the meshes all the way across the map just by holding another mesh. I want to go ahead and take care of that. So let's go ahead and escape and get out and go back to the player blueprint. All right, and coming back in, you're going to see we got a bunch of errors right here. That's simply because I pressed E while we were grabbing the item and it jumped it into inventory. So we'll have to deal with that, but that's not a big deal. That's all that is right there. We'll take care of that in just a little bit. So go ahead and ignore that. All right, so we're going to go ahead and cut the episode off right here just to keep the video length down to a reasonable amount of time. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please do me a favor, go down and hit that like button, subscribe while you're down there liking it, hit that notification bell so you're updated when the next video in this series is uploaded. And until next time, peace.